Trump will sit for a deposition with the New York Attorney General's office. That meeting, part of a civil investigation into the business dealings of the Trump Organization. Fox 5's Robert Moses is live outside Trump Tower in Midtown with more. Robert, good morning.
Bianca and Rosanna, good morning to you. It's not clear at this point if the former president will answer every question that is posed to him today or if he will invoke his Fifth Amendment right. What is clear is that he has already made his disdain for New York's Attorney General quite well known.
We love you, Donald!
Donald Trump arrived back at Trump Tower last night to cheers. Today, the former president will meet with representatives from the Office of New York Attorney General Letitia James, who is conducting a civil investigation into the business practices of the Trump Organization. He confirmed the meeting on his Truth Social account. James wants to know if the Trump Organization inflated the value of properties to get loans and tax benefits. The AG's office already deposed two of the former president's children, Ivanka and Don Jr. Early this morning on Truth Social, former President Trump called James racist and said her investigation continues the greatest witch hunt in U.S. history. He used the same language to describe the FBI search of Mar-a-Lago on Monday. He and his supporters claim politics motivated the hunt for materials the former president should have given to the National Archives. But the White House press secretary said the administration learned about the search exactly how the American people did.
The president was not briefed, was not aware of it. No one at the White House was given a heads up.
Republicans remain skeptical.
Nobody's above the law, but the law needs to be above politics.
Former Vice President Mike Pence expressed his deep concern and called on Attorney General Merrick Garland to give a full accounting to the American people as to why this action was taken. Republican Senator Rick Scott of Florida sounded similarly alarmed.
This should scare the living daylights out of American citizens.
The former president faces multiple investigations as he continues to tease another potential White House bid. As Republicans cried foul about the FBI search, the House Speaker defended it.
No person is above the law, not even the President of the United States, not even a former President of the United States.
And that former president of the United States got an unlikely assist from the former governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, who said on Twitter that he feels the Department of Justice needs to explain the reason for that search of Mar-a-Lago. He said the DOJ risks undermining the credibility of other investigations, like the one into the January 6th insurrection. Rosanna and Bianca, back to you.
Robert, thank you so much for the update.